Hi, good evening. Welcome to all of our Semester at Sea alumni community. Thank you for joining us for the latest installment of our Wavelengths alumni series. This online series highlights the talents of our Semester at Sea alumni around the world. And we feature an alum or a panel of alumni from different industries and career fields every other Wednesday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time right here on our official Semester at Sea Facebook page. I am Kate Ashley. I'm the Director of Alumni and Parent Engagement in the Semester at Sea Home Office in Fort Collins, Colorado. And tonight I have the pleasure of speaking with several shipmates from the Spring 17 voyage, Nico Varela, Cassandra Taylor, Maya Gilmore, who along with our professor and executive dean, Dr. Dan Garvey, published a book called Stories of Hope, asking locals in all the ports that they visited, what gives you hope? So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about this book this evening. But before we delve into that, I wanted all of our panelists to introduce themselves. I'll start with you, Nico, if you want to go first.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having us and allow us to share our little project with the whole Semester at Sea community. We're really excited to do it. So I'm Nico Varela. I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina, as you can tell from my accent. And I'm a lawyer, and I'm currently working in the judiciary here in Argentina. And I sailed in the Spring 17 voyage alongside these amazing people. You wanna go next, Cassandra?
Sure. I'm Cassandra Taylor. Of course, I also sailed on the Spring 2017. I currently live outside of Denver, Colorado, and I'm a graphic designer, and I work for a little design agency here in Denver. Maya?
Sure. I also want to say thank you. I'm really glad to be here with everybody. My name is Maya. I did also the Spring 2017 voyage, and I just accepted a position as the AmeriCorps service member for the Governor's Institute of Vermont. And so that will be starting soon, and I'm very excited for it. So yeah. How about you, Dan?
Well, thanks, Maya. I'm doubly grateful because I get to see all of you again, which is great. And it's nice to see you as well, Kate, and get some connection to the main office. I'm Dan Garvey. I retired a couple of years ago as president at Prescott College in Prescott, Arizona. I spend my time now consulting and working on projects around the world, mostly involved in some level of social change. And I am currently a trustee for Semester at Sea. I've been on multiple voyages, and the next one that we will be on is the spring voyage of 23. So we are slowly beginning to ramp up.
No, thank you for the introductions. Well, the first point of order of business is this wonderful book that you all wrote. And Nico, I wanted to ask you, how did the idea for this book develop? What started the idea, and then how did it end up coming to fruition?
Yeah, well, I have it right here on display if you guys want to check it out. Yeah, well, actually, I remember even before embarking, I really wanted to do something to take advantage of this unique opportunity to sail across the world and see all these different cultures, but I didn't really know what to do. And it wasn't until Dan's class about social change that for me was basically a class about hope, about how can we come together and take action to try to make this world a better place. So yeah, in that class, we came up with the idea to interview people in each country we visit and ask them what gives you hope. And for me, it was really interesting to try to find out that even though we live in all these different countries and we have these different cultures and we speak different languages, maybe there's a unified voice of hope that we can all find despite all this difference. And in this way, this project really helped me recognize and acknowledge that there's a spark of hope within each of us that really unite us and help us understand one another better and how to connect with other people better, knowing what gives them hope. So yeah, it was a really interesting project, and we're really happy that it came up into a book later. So yeah, we're super excited.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And so Dan, as the professor of this class, and you were also the executive dean at the time, and you've sailed many times, many different capacities. Can you tell us a little bit more about this social change class and your experience with this group of students developing this project and this book?
Sure. Well, the major question that the class is attempting to answer is, how do different people in a variety of cultures work on behalf of the common good? So what do they do? How do they change? What things are they doing? And I thought that it was an appropriate thing to be doing, going from port to port and kind of looking at who are the social change agents and what are they doing and how is it done. I guess I'm spoiled, having done a number of semester at sea voyages. When I walk into the classroom, I expect to see the people like the ones that are here tonight. I expect to see students who are really engaged and are interested in changing the typical dynamic that usually occurs in colleges and universities, where there's an unholy alliance that's made between the faculty and the students, and that the faculty is usually expected to care more about the subject than the students do. And that isn't the case in semester at sea. You walk into a classroom and you usually see a bunch of bright, shiny faces, people eager to learn about things, and especially a topic like social change. Who would show up for that class unless they were interested in some of the dynamics that are exciting to all of us? So again, I was never disappointed. Remarkable group of students. I've taught the course a couple of times. I had another group in the summer of 14, I believe, that was one of the best groups I've ever had. And so these are now lifelong friends, and we have this project that we shared together as well.
And I think that's something that's so special and so unique about the Semester at Sea community, which I know you all can attest to. So Cassandra, what were some of the biggest challenges that you encountered when you were, first starting this project and then writing the book?
Yeah, so I actually wasn't in Dan's social change class. My roommate on the ship, Michelle, was. So she actually brought the project to me and kind of introduced it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a cool idea. Like, we have to do this. And I mean, they were all super excited about doing it. And Nico and Michelle made it pretty easy. They were super helpful in putting everything together. They collected all of the interviews and photos. Nico, towards the end, reached out to the Chapman Foundation that actually funded the book so that every student in the class could get their own copy for free. And they were a great resource, as well as we reached out for translations. We reached out to people on the ship for all of the artwork in the book. We reached out to Liv, who was in the class, and she hand wrote all of the translations of Hope. So it made it pretty easy that I just kind of had to compile everything into this book. In terms of the design, I mean, time was kind of a big thing just because we were all still in school. I mean, being a graphic designer, studio art classes take a lot of time. So it was kind of like we worked on this really hard push, and then it just kind of kept getting pushed to the side. The biggest design challenge for me was definitely the table of contents. I was stuck on that table of contents for 2 years. I tried so many different designs, and I was like, I hate all of these. And then finally, last a year and a half ago now, it finally clicked. I don't know what it was or how I even thought of it, but suddenly I was just like, oh my gosh, that's it. I finally did it. So by then, 90% of the book was complete. And so it was really just that table of contents, and I adjusted all of the little story fact pages or country fact pages that we have. to kind of match that table of contents. And then like I just reached out to Nico last like December, I think, and I was like, okay, like we're done, like the book is together, let's get this published. And so that's kind of when like he reached out to the Chapman Foundation, and we kind of got like the last bits together. We reached back out to Michelle and Dan, and they proofread it, and we finally got it published and up on Blurb for purchase on the anniversary of our disembarkation. So that was a lot.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And was that planned, or was that just a coincidence?
It was a little bit of a coincidence that it was finally ready by then, but it was definitely like a week before I was kind of pushing, like, let's do it. Let's post it on this date. Like, come on, let's get it done. So a little bit of both.
It was meant to be.
Yeah.
And Maya, what were some of the most surprising things you learned?
Could I add a little to what Cassandra just said?
Oh, of course. Yes.
Sorry. No, because it's true, because we all pretty much had the whole book already finished, like a few months after our voyage ended, but we were missing like just a few little stuff. And when Cassandra came up with this aha moment and she finished the book, I don't think any of us knew that it was gonna turn into a book. We only thought that it was a fun class project. And after we pretty much finished it, we thought this should be published. And that's when we reached to Dan, who contacted us with Greg Chapman, who is also in the board of trustees of Semester at Sea. So we have to give a huge thank you to Greg Chapman and the Chapman Foundation. And they really help us to make our little PDF project actually into a hardcover book. So we couldn't be more thankful to Greg Chapman and his foundation. And well, and thank to them to contact us with him and vouch for us and recommend our project. So yeah, all those little pieces, as Cassandra mentioned, that the project started on the class, but then we reach out for all the talents that we had available on the ship. So Cassandra was a graphic designer, so we grabbed her. Some other students were artists, and they draw amazing pictures of the different countries we visit. So we asked them to borrow, if we could borrow their art for a book, and they agreed to that. And what else? Well, as Cassandra mentioned, people who were really good with like designing the letters and really beautiful side comments to the pages. So we grabbed their talent as well. So something that started as a class project, but ended up becoming like a whole ship project. So we were really proud with the final result and all the people who put their energy and work together to make this happen. So yeah, thanks to all of you.
Yeah. We also reached out to different contacts in the countries so that the word hope was translated correctly. So every single translation was done by somebody either on Semester at Sea or somebody met on Semester at Sea.
I love that. I love that you were able to expand it beyond your classroom to the rest of the ship.
Yeah, and also to all the students that were part of that class of social change who had to conduct the interviews, because it might sound easy to just go to someone and interview them. But if you think about it, just grabbing someone you just met on the street or on a bus and asking what gives you hope without sounding like a crazy person is a little challenging. So it was really fun to interact in that way with the locals. But I think it would also give us the opportunity to connect on a more deeper level, because when you ask someone what gives you hope, the conversation usually goes to some really interesting places. So yeah, it was really interesting to have this excuse to have better connections with the people we meet thanks to this project.
Yeah, no, that's a really good piece of insight. I think that you don't think about asking questions to people you just meet on the street, but I think it opens some nice channels of communication. So thank you for sharing that. Well, Maya, I wanted to know, what were some of the most surprising things you learned while doing these interviews, starting this project, writing the book?
Yeah, I love that question that you bring in the element of surprise. And it actually, Nico, what you were just talking about is the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of surprise, is that moment that you turn to the person you're sitting next to on the bus and ask them, what gives you hope? I feel like, at least I'll speak from my own experience, every time I ask that question, there was a distinct look on the person's face of surprise. It was kind of like, it takes people off guard a little bit to be met with such a like deep question, you know? And so that's the first thing I think of when I hear the word surprise in context of this book, is the faces of the people that we would talk to. And I think that you know, that brings me down this you know, question, I suppose, of like, you know, what does it mean to open up spaces more regularly about considering the things that bring us hope, and that the things that we have hope for. And, you know, one of the responses that I received from an interview participant was a very beautiful expression of gratitude and thank you for having asked the question and provided the opportunity to reflect in that way. And so, yeah, that was definitely, that element of surprise came in for me in that way. And I think one more thing that definitely surprised me was the amount of well, on one hand, the breadth of answers, how people answer in so many different ways based on their own personal lives and the things that they hope for themselves, which is, you know, so beautiful. And then also thinking about the collective, you know, what people hope for the world. Like, there was such a wide range of answers within that spectrum. And, but I do think that, you know, I was very surprised to see that a common theme in a lot of the answers was this sense of finding hope in younger generations. And what that, you know, the questions that asks, you know, inspires me to ask are, you know, the wondering about how, you know, thinking about younger generations and wanting a better world for generations that come after us. It kind of speaks to the fact that social change is such an intergenerational project. It's not something that we necessarily come to and witness, maybe even in our lifetimes. It's something that we participate in through our lifetimes. And so, yeah, those were some things that surprised me in the making of this book.
Wow, thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to interview Desmond Tutu, so lucky you.
Actually, it was Marie, remember?
Oh, I thought you did.
No, because when Desmond Tutu came up onto the ship and had a beautiful conversation with us, and Marie was the one who raised her hand and had the opportunity to officially ask the question. And yeah, but I think, you know, we were all sitting in the audience listening, and Desmond Tutu also said the younger generations are what give him hope. And yeah, so it was beautiful.
Oh, that really is. And I think it's really powerful and speaks to what we're doing even with Semester at Sea, right? With the intergenerational components of the community building on the ship, and what we're doing for our future, you know, building the future global citizens with the students who are on the ship. So I really like that connection that you made, Maya.
Thank you. Absolutely.
And so speaking about kind of the broader Semester at Sea experience, I wanted to know, Nico, how has Semester at Sea impacted or changed your life?
Well, yeah, so I think definitely Semester at Sea is a life-changing and transformative experience. I haven't met anyone who did Semester at Sea and didn't see them change in some way. So maybe actually Dan could talk a little about his research regarding the Semester at Sea impact on the lives of the students. That you did some work on that, right, Dan?
Yes.
But for me, at least, I think it really makes you become like a more conscious and global citizen, and a little more aware of things that are going on in the world. Like, for example, today I was reading about the army taking control over Myanmar, and I'm reading that news, and maybe before it was something like, okay, something bad is happening in some place that I don't even know existed. But now it's like I was there. I know people there. I was actually in the house of the woman Aung San Suu Kyi who was taken off the power. I was in her house for one of her semester at sea tours. So I think when you have those experiences, it kind of really, like, the news impacts you on a different level, and because you know people there who might be affected by what's going on. So yeah, I think it really makes you be more aware about the world around you. And yeah, and actually that's one of the reasons why we decided to give the profits of the book to Semester at Sea for scholarships, to allow more students to be able to have those experiences and to be able to afford do this program. I actually was like, the only reason I was able to do Semester at Sea was because I got like 5 different scholarships, and I'm still super grateful and honored that I was selected for that. Because otherwise it wouldn't be pretty much impossible. So yeah, we thought it would be a nice way to give a little something back, as much as we can, to give others the opportunity to do this life-changing experience. But yeah, Dan, if you can tell us more about your research on the impact on Semester at Sea, it will be really interesting.
Sure. I'll try to make it brief. You never want to ask a faculty member to start talking about their research. That's a deadly place to be, because, as you know, one of the job requirements is for faculty members that you're willing to talk long after everyone has had just about enough. So I came into Semester at Sea basically, in some respects, through the research. I was dean at the large state university, and one of the things that I did, the University of New Hampshire, one of the things that I did was I had to sign students' form when they came back from being on a leave of absence. So imagine you've got 25,000 students, a certain percentage of them are taking a leave off, and those students took a leave of absence to go on Semester at Sea. And so when they came back, like all of their students, I would interview them and then sign their form. Well, I didn't know a lot about Semester at Sea, but I would interview students that, you know, went to Rome, or somebody who went on Knowles, or somebody who worked at their father's factory, or whatever it was that caused them to take a leave. And then the students from Semester at Sea would show up, and I would hear these stories of this transformational experience. And I would swallow and try to be, you know, positive about it. But in my mind, I was kind of thinking, really? I mean, is it really this big? But I kept it in the back of my mind. So when I had a chance to go, I got on with a little bit of skepticism. I mean, could it really be this way? And it was, and it caused me to be involved in several research projects that tried to document or capture it. So the one that is maybe perhaps most interesting is that one of the projects, I pre-tested students at the beginning of a Semester at Sea voyage and post-tested them at the end, and tried to measure the changes in their moral reasoning. In other words, how sophisticated was their notion of right and wrong as a result of having a Semester at Sea experience. And the instrument that I used had been used countless times in other colleges and universities to measure all sorts of things, from law school programs to whatever you want. I mean, it had been used. So I had some notion of what kind of movement we should see. So I did this with Semester at Sea and found out that not only do we romantically think Semester at Sea changes us, but statistically, it is one of the most profound experiences that we can undertake as an undergraduate to move us along to sort of an advanced level of reasoning. And I don't know about you, but the world that I'm living in right now is a little short on advanced levels of reasoning. So anything that's going to increase that, I'm in favor of. So anyway, that was the research, and there's plenty of other research. So for any of the folks out there that are Semester at Sea alums or whatever, I want you to stand proud and know that it's not just your emotion speaking when you say that it changed your life. we can actually show you the data that will prove that this is one of the most significant events that anyone could do during that period of their time, their life, if you wanted to see substantial changes in their character.
That's a perfect segue, Dan, because I was going to ask you next, what do you love most about being a faculty member on the semester at Sea Voyages, but you've also served as executive dean, and you also currently serve as a board of trustee member. So what do you love most about all of those experiences?
The community. You know, it's, I mean, who wouldn't want to do this? I mean, this is an amazing event. It's an amazing event. And each voyage is different, but it's a community. And as an educator, that age group, this might be one of the last times that you have to really allow people to try on different ways of thinking. Pretty soon, they're going to have to get calcified in some way in order for them to make money and to do the things they need to do and be successful. Hopefully they'll go through a metamorphosis later on, but this is one of the last best times. And to be in the presence of students and to live with them for that 4-month period, I mean, to actually be in community where we know each other, we love each other, and that is, it's unbelievable. So it's been from the time I was 33 until today, it's been something that has kind of served as a lifeboat, allowing me to deal with some of the mundane notions of a regular, typical life and know that this is coming up. So anyway, it's extraordinary. Anyone who's tuning in knows that, or they wouldn't even know about Semester at Sea.
Yes, I think that's something that our Wavelength participants, Lisa Landerman and Dr. John Timmons, talked about last week, is that what happens on the ship, that magic that happens on the ship, is what a lot of colleges and universities are trying to get to happen with living learning communities, but it just kind of happens very organically and naturally on our Semester at Sea ships. So thinking about, you mentioned people would not be tuning in if they didn't know about Semester at Sea. I wanted, Cassandra, if you wanted to know if you had any advice for some of our future Semester at Sea voyagers, people who are already planning on going, or for anyone who's thinking about going, what advice would you give them?
I mean, first, do it. As I'm sure, like everybody that has been on Semester at Sea and stuff will tell you, like, do it. I mean, it is really an amazing experience. In terms of like advice, if you know you're going, like I would really urge you to like live in the moment and just like really focus on those like positive experiences, because it can be really, really difficult. Like when you're in country, like you miss a train or you don't know, like you don't get to go do something that you really wanted to do. And it's so easy to focus on the negative. I mean, like for our voyage, we never made it to Mauritius. And I remember like a lot of people would get caught up in that of like, you know, we didn't get to go. That's so disappointing. But like, you're still on this voyage. Like really focus on those, like you're still having these amazing experiences and you're still here in country and you're still learning all of these new things. So, I mean, I would really urge you to just like really focus on like, how else would you be doing this? Like what else, like how else would you be getting these experiences? Because you're here and in the moment and you're having these experiences. So really just focus on that.
And I think that's really good advice, especially in these very uncertain times when, Dan, you were supposed to be the executive dean on the Spring 21 voyage that was supposed to be sailing right now. And we're so glad you get to be with us here today. But yes, as you all know, that's one of the traits of a Semester at Sea alum is adaptability and flexibility, being prepared to pivot when unexpected things are thrown your way. So I appreciate you touching on that, Cassandra. Mm-hmm. And Maya, I have a question for you, which is kind of it's a big question. It's central to the theme of the book, but what what gives you hope? How can we all look for hope during these very challenging times?
Yeah. So, I mean, so much of what has just come up in this conversation has, I feel like, leaned into that idea of like, what does it mean to find hope in these challenging and confusing times? And I think, you know, Dan was talking about the importance of community on Semester at Sea, and you know, the ways that we reach that. I feel like, you know, it's unique when we are on the ship because we don't have, you know, access to cell service to be like lost in our phones. We like, you know, find ways to have conversations with people, you know, all of those things that I feel like in this time period right now with the confusion and the challenge of isolation and division, you know, those opportunities sometimes seem to feel far, you know, few and far between. But, you know, I feel like being able to, you know, hold space, like I said earlier, hold space for like moments like this, where we're coming together, even if it is over our screen, we're coming together and we're talking about these things. You know, I feel like hope can even be found in the books that you're reading or the TV shows that you're watching, like, you know, anything that allows your imagination to spark, you know, like I feel like hope is something that is accessed through our imaginative powers and the ability to dream up futures that we want to exist for ourselves or for the collective. And so in that dreaming up, in that imagination, I think we find that hope, which I also think, you know, to find hope, you know, that's a verb. That's something that we do. It's not just something that hope exists, you know, it's not just that it's something, you know, floating around in the air that we can latch onto and you know, bring into ourselves. It's something that we search for, we lean into, we find, even in the things that maybe, you know, might seem super mundane. You know, it's any moment that we can grasp onto, and it's necessary for our ability to keep moving forward. So yeah, I suppose that's my answer to that very large question.
Yes, no, it's a very large question. And I don't know if Cassandra, Nico, or Dan, do you want to add to that or expand to Maya's answer? Or perhaps just the simple question that you asked the locals: what gives you all hope individually? What are things that you look to?
I think we need student voices.
Yes, I mean, I agree with everything Maya and Dan and Cassandra said. Regarding to the semester at sea experience itself, I think the community and the people you met there are really special and unique. And I met some of the most amazing people I met in my life in semester at sea. Some are in this chat right now. So besides going to all these different places and visit all these different countries and cultures, I'm really thankful for all the people I met. And regarding to the hope part, I always think about the Pandora's box story, which Pandora had this box that opened and all the like evils of the world came up out of it, and she closed it just before the hope came out of the box. And like the first time I read the story, I really didn't understand why hope, that's supposed to be something good, was trapped with all the bad things in the world. And it kind of made me think about it. And I realized that hope can be a good thing when you hope for stuff that you want in your life, but also when you work towards those stuff. And in Spanish, hope is esperanza, which has a similar meaning with the word esperar, which is like to wait. So I think hope could be bad if you only wait for it, like something magical that is going to happen, and you don't work and put your effort to that something that you hope for will actually happen. Make sense? So for me, it was a really interesting way the word hope could be something good or evil. And writing this book, or my answer to the book, I actually said that what gives me hope is youth, because as Maya mentioned, a lot of the the pressure is put on the new generations, like to fix the problems that dance generations did. Joking. And
not really.
Yeah. And also in technology to allow us to have new tools to try to make a better change happen faster using technology and innovation. That was my answer.
Sorry, can I jump in? It's so interesting to hear the connection between hope and weight, the language connection.
Yeah,
because
in Spanish it's much easier.
Yeah, it reminds me of the book that we read during the class, The Impossible Will Take a Little While. And I just feel like that speaks so much to what it means to hope, that there is, like you said, there can be a light and a dark to it, but there is this patience involved sometimes. And I guess that also speaks to the importance of like intergenerational and like, across generation work, that it's not about necessarily only seeing the fruits of your labor, but it's also not about sitting and not doing anything just because you're not going to see it. Yeah.
Actually, I think Nietzsche said something like hope was one of the worst evils of humanity, because it kind of lingers people on that hopeful waiting for something that it might never going to happen, and they just are hopeful that it will. So at the long run, it kind of disappoints you if it doesn't. Mm-hmm. So I think that active part of trying to put all of your work and the best out of you to kind of make whatever you're hoping for happens, it's a key element in it. But yeah, it's what I took from my analysis.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I just thought of the Emily Dickinson poem, Hope is the Thing with Feathers. And imagining like, okay, so the thing with feathers is this thing that like, stands on the ground, but in order to actually make it fly, you have to do the work to flap the wings, which is just an interesting way to look at how hope can galvanize the actual action behind it.
I think of hope as a choice. Pretty practical about it, actually. I don't know how you get anything done without hope. I really don't. So given that, you have to constantly be finding it, as Maya said, and you have to be nurturing it. Without hope, there's no possibility of change. Simple things like everybody's been in lockdown. So if you had to lose 5 pounds, can you lose 5 pounds if you have no hope? No. I mean, that's as simple as it gets. So if you can't lose 5 pounds without hope, can you make changes in the society? I doubt it. So the notion of hope is, to me, a practical ingredient for successful life. It's a necessary practical ingredient. And it, as Maya said so brilliantly, it's not always there. It's not just sitting there on your shelf where you can just take it down. It's something that you have to insert into your life. And like everything else, like an exercise program that will help you with the 5 pounds, just in case. Write to me later. I'll let you know how to do it. You can do things that will increase the likelihood that hope will be in your life, but you have to start.
Right. Like, why bother doing anything if you're not hopeful that it will turn out well, right? Like, why bother?
Right.
Get off of the couch if I have no expectation that thing will happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that speaks a little bit to the, like, as we're traveling on our voyage, we're learning about a lot of historical, events in the places that we go. And history, unfortunately, doesn't really stick in my brain, so I can't pull out any facts, but I do remember the feeling of learning about some of the hardest things that have happened in these places. And I feel like it was such a important thing for me to also be in context, to be sharing and discussing the ways we can find hope within those things through this social change class. Because like Dan said, it is this choice, and it doesn't negate the things that are difficult, but it makes the betterment of those difficult things possible. So, yeah.
Very well said. Cassandra, do you have anything to add, or anything, do you want to share what gives you hope personally as well?
Sure. I mean, like, as they were kind of talking to, like, I mean, that act of like activism, I would say that like what really gives me hope right now is all of the activism we've been seeing over the last year. I mean, we've seen so much with the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that, but also within other like areas, like online and socially. Like, I mean, I've seen a lot more and like tried to get on the radar a lot more of like Native American like issues and struggles, and how they are really trying to claim all of their sacred sites. So we're seeing a lot more of all of that. And like just this continuing push, even with like the new administration, of like holding them accountable and really pushing that, like, no, we need, like, we still want all of these like social changes, and really just holding everybody accountable and really pushing for those changes.
Kate, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope? No. No. You're putting me on the spot.
Yeah, I know.
The true professor. You know, I really like, I wanted to say, I really like how you guys are all bringing it back to the link, you know, hope being the catalyst to change, and the link to activism. It's something I don't think a lot of people think about right away, and how important that piece is. So I think what gives me hope is very similar to many of the things that you all have said, is sense of community and my relationships with people that I care about. And I do think there is something very powerful about thinking of the future generations. And I think, like you just said, Cassandra, too, I think seeing people across the world, of all ages, really taking a stand and being politically, lots of different ways engaged in their communities, and helping each other. And I think even through this pandemic, I think that theme of caring for your community and caring for your neighbor, especially when we've all been stuck at home, I think that notion of being a good neighbor, what that means, that underlying theme gives me hope. And like, that's something that motivates me as well. So thanks for asking, Dan. I wasn't prepared, but the true professor.
It was a beautiful answer for unpreparedness.
Yeah.
No,
but I mean, don't we all agree that the program itself is, you know, hope floats on Semester at Sea. I mean, it's a vessel full of people who, whether they acknowledge it or not, have hope in their DNA. I don't think many people would want to get on a ship and go around the world to confirm all of their worst feelings about how horrible things are. I mean, that's not the way that personality shows up in the world. They tend to be in a reclusive place looking and pointing. But when you get on the ship, I think, whether people call it hope or whatever, I think there is a buoyancy that occurs with the personalities. People are charged up and they're waiting to see what goes on. And most of us are there to confirm the human condition, not to criticize it.
I think that's wonderful. Well, we have one question from our audience, and if anyone else has any questions, you can drop them in the comments below. We were talking about all of the different answers you received, and of course, there is no rating, or no one answer is better than the other. But was there an answer that stood out to you all as you were doing this research. Did something stand out to you, or make you laugh or inspire you? Do any of you remember, whether it's your personal favorite answer? I'd love to hear from you all on that piece.
I think Dan interviewed, correct me if I'm wrong, but when they asked her what gives you hope, she said, I hope to be young forever. And then she retracted and say, no, I hope for my family to be happy. But I think it was fun on the answers. Like what just happened to you, Kate, like someone dropped a question like that you're not expecting and you don't have like really prepared answer. You find out like the most, different answers. But I think also in a way you can really identify with that person, like whatever they say and what gives them hope. So I think it's a question that really opens up to generate like a more empathic connection with that people, because despite where they live or their culture of what language they speak, you can always find some common ground in what gives you hope to both of you in a way, even if you might be completely different persons in everything else. That was one of the lessons I took from reading all these different answers. Like we can always find common ground.
Mm-hmm. While I was doing it, I kept coming back to this picture of this little girl in Beijing, and she's playing with like this ribbon or something. And just every time I saw that picture, it just brought a smile to my face. And I think she just says like her mom gives her hope or something, but just that picture is just so pure that I just love it. But I think like interview wise, again, I didn't do interviews, but I was with my roommate in China when she did her interview. And I mean, we talked to this one guy for like an hour, and he was just so interesting and entertaining. I mean, we found like this little tiny like punk themed bar in Zhujiazhou, and we just sat there for an hour with the owner talking to him. And he was just so interesting because punk is not really what you would think of with Chinese culture.
Yeah.
Another Maya one, or Dan?
Sorry, another one that I really like was there was this woman giving pamphlets about peace outside the Hiroshima War Museum, and someone asked her, "What gives you hope?" And she said, "I hope for peace, for all the atrocities that the Hiroshima bomb did to us." So I don't know, in that context, when you visit the Hiroshima Museum, that is really sad in a way, but for all when you find out everything that happened, and this woman every day outside that museum sharing pamphlets about hope and about peace, I think was something really hopeful for me.
There's one that sticks out in my mind, which was the one I mentioned earlier, that a woman who expressed a deep sense of thank you for asking the question in the first place, but it wasn't just that we asked the question, it's that the sense of thank you was her hope. And it was really beautiful to, I think this also speaks to the experience of, being in contact with people whose first language is not English, or who, we don't speak the language of either. And so there's that, there are things that get lost in translation, but there are things that remain incredibly poetic in the lack of connection of certain translation. And I think the thing that was so poetic about her answer was that something that gives her hope is that she walks around and tries to make thank yous. And I just love that image of like, you want to create a thank you. It feels like a creative act to be a giving person, or to, share something for another person that would incite a thank you. And yeah, so that one has stuck with me.
What about you, Dan? Any that stood out to you or struck you?
I guess I was a little bit amused by the translation piece. One of the wonderful things about a semester at sea experience, and all of us know that, is that you think you're communicating absolutely clearly. And then you find out through your conversation or whatever that 60% of it was successful. So we asked the question, what gives you hope? And the vast majority of people understood the nuance of that question. But there was a significant number of people that heard that as, what do I hope for? Mm-hmm. And so they responded, instead of what gives you hope, children, they responded, I hope for a new BMW, or I hope for and that was it was, as I started reading everyone's interviews, I was struck by that, because I know that happened to me. Mm-hmm. I was most often interviewing people that I already knew, because I was going to ports where I had friends and, people that I'd known for a long time, and I could ask people that I know, or what gave them hope. And it was contextual there. It was not an inappropriate question. But when I was talking to a random person, I remember being in Vietnam and, asking someone, and as soon as he started to respond, I realized he heard it as, what do you hope for? And as Maya said, that's great too. I mean, it's interesting, but mm-hmm. things do get lost in the translation, and sometimes they're improved.
Well, as we are kind of coming to the end of our time together, do you all have any closing thoughts or any parting words that you'd like to leave with your fellow Semester at Sea alumni who are watching this evening?
So before I forget, now that we are sharing what gives us hope, we also want to hear what the audience, what gives hope to the audience. So we wanted to do like a little, not contest, but like a giveaway of one of our books. So we're gonna ask, if you want, you can write what gives you hope in one of the comments in the Instagram, in the Semester at Sea Instagram, of one of the picture we're gonna probably upload. We're gonna select randomly one of the answers of what gives you hope and give away one of the books in case anyone wants it.
Oh, thanks, Nico. Anyone else?
I'm just grateful that you would have thought that this was a project that was worthy of being featured on Wavelengths. I know that this is a great program. I've seen many of them, and I think we're all honored that you would have even considered, our work together to be something that people would be interested in. So thanks, Kate.
Oh yeah. No, thank you all for your time, and I think it's very timely. I think this notion is always timely, but I think especially right now. And I think, really how Wavelengths really evolved, kind of starting at the beginning of the pandemic last April, in April 2020, was how can we spark joy and strengthen the community with our Semester at Sea alumni virtually. And that's really kind of how this whole thing was born. So I like full circle and getting to connect with what gives us all hope. And I think the common answer is, at the end of the day, our Semester at Sea community and our relationships with one another. I think you all can attest to that. And I am kind of putting you on the spot a bit, Maya, but you were mentioning some advice that Dan gave your class, relationships with people, and I was wondering if you would share that with the group right before we close here.
Absolutely. Oh, there's so many nuggets of advice that Dan gave to our class, but also that on the ship, you find these nuggets of advice through different professors. And it's just such a rich platform for having little nuggets of advice. And the one that I was talking about earlier was, it was in context of relationships. And when there's somebody that you want to reach out to for any reason, I suppose, but in the context of reaching out for support or, professional development or something like that, and you have any sort of trepidation towards being a burden or, not wanting to impose on anybody, Dan would always say to us, do your part of the relationship and trust that I'll do my part of the relationship. So if it ever was going to be too much for him, he would express that to us. And so to never stop the flow of connection short just because you assume someone might not be able to meet you where you're trying to meet them, and just extend the hand even if you have the urge, and trust that it'll pan out as it may. So yeah.
I think that's perfect. Well, I think that's a great way to end here this evening. We will be putting a link where you can purchase the book if you guys are interested. And Nico mentioned the profits from the book go to the Semester at Sea Annual Fund to fund scholarships for future Semester at Sea voyagers. So I love the giving back piece. And again, I really appreciate Maya, Cassandra, Nico, and Dan, your time this evening, and all of your fellow classmates who helped you with this project. Please extend my thanks to them as well. And we just really appreciate you all spending time with us. And as you consider giving back to causes that you care about, we always just like to remind you that Semester at Sea is a 501c3 nonprofit. And we need your support now more than ever, and gifts of any size make a difference. And one thing that really is helpful is if you are able to help with recurring monthly gifts, again, even if it's just a small amount, the cost of a latte per month, that's very helpful, or purchasing the book with a portion of proceeds going to the scholarships, that's always very helpful. In 2 Wednesdays, Wednesday, February 17th at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, we will be having a conversation with Shelley Galloway, who is a member of our Lifelong Learning Council, which is part of our Alumni Association. And she's an alum who has sailed on many voyages in many different capacities. And she's going to be discussing this very unique concept, and I will probably mispronounce it, but it is Shinrin Yoku. It's the Japanese art of forest bathing, which involves immersing yourself in nature, and what that art, along with meditative photography, and how those two things together can be used for creative inspiration and probably to give people hope. So on February 17th, we'll be having a conversation with Shelley. And I just want to put it out to the rest of our alumni community. If you or someone you know from your voyage, if you have an interesting story to share about how Semester at Sea has influenced your life or career path, email wavelengths at semesteratsea.org to be considered for a future segment. We'd love to hear from you. And if you are looking for other ways to get involved as an alum, or you were inspired tonight hearing about the stories of hope, we have a new storyteller series where alumni of any age can share their life-changing journey on various social media platforms. So we'll drop a link in the comments below where you can sign up if you are interested in learning more. So thank you again for your time, everyone. And thanks to all of our alumni watching. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.